I'm Irene Holtzman. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Choice in Urban Schools, better known as Focus. We're a 22-year-old organization that has supported and advocated for public charter schools since the very beginning of the movement. Early in my tenure at Focus, I was approached by folks from the military base in Ward 8, and they were really interested in moving forward and finding a charter school to operate on land adjacent, or that will become adjacent to the base. They had some ideas about how to make that happen. They had done some legislative work in terms of securing a military preference for one Ward 8 school, but the moving forward with selecting an operator was something that had become technically tricky for them, and so they came for advice. Focus ended up conceiving of the process that they ended up using, which was creating a panel of parents that represented both the Ward 8 families who will be served by the school and military families who will be served by the school, and allowing those families to create a request for proposals for operators who are interested in operating the school. And then they would select from that and make a formal recommendation to the military in terms of who should operate the school. But when we looked into it, no one really had a blueprint of like, this is how to do it from A to Z. Like there were RFPs and there were processes, but we knew we needed to create something relatively new. I think what parents bring are their hopes and aspirations and dreams for their children. And so there's sort of this feeling when you walk into a school or when you hear the description of a school that may or may not resonate with you as a parent. And while I, as an educator, have really strong ideas about what makes a good school, just because you have students who can read, write, and do math, the process you use to get the reading and writing and doing math, I'm pretty agnostic about. That should be unsurprising. I work in the charter school space. I'm like, I don't care how you do it, just get it done. For parents, the how you do it is incredibly important. They have beliefs about what makes good school and what's right for their own individual child. And so the question is, when you bring 8 parents together, what common set of beliefs and values do they have? And what school is going to best meet those common values or those common desires? What people were really clear from the beginning is we have to have an excellent school. And then I think both the Ward 8 parents and the military parents had very similar desires. And I would say we saw that align even more on the school visits, where they had very similar reactions to different schools as we visited. And so I think where schools are best set up to be successful is when there's deep community buy-in and a belief that they're doing what's right for children. And with a new school, when we see like new charters applying, they do community engagement. Here it's just a little different. You have the community talk about their dreams, and then you have operators come and say, we can fulfill these dreams for you. And they get to figure out who best aligns with the parameters they've set up. So there were a couple places where parents really dug in on things that felt pretty unimportant's not the right word, but they wouldn't be the thing. For instance, I actually don't care about food service at a school. One thing I know from having worked in multiple schools is that children are universally miserable with school lunch. And so putting too much effort there beyond like sort of the basic due diligence is not necessary. But like all of the parents like uniformly cared about the fact that there would be like a healthy meal and snack policy and some other things. And I think for both Maya and I, who are less familiar with the particular needs of military families, watching them discuss sort of what models will work well for both students who may not have been served well traditionally in Ward 8, and also for the military families who those kids tend to move around a lot. They sometimes have learning gaps because they're in 2 different school systems in 1 year, how that's being addressed. I don't know if we would have been as aware of that if we hadn't really deeply engaged military parents. And then I think we have some assumptions too. So from some of our community work, we hear that certain kinds of programs are needed in certain parts of the city. And what we found is that that level of involvement on, say, pedagogy, like did you want a bilingual school or an expeditionary learning school or a STEM school, that actually wasn't something where the parents had any strong opinions. They wanted a school that felt like a community, that aligned itself around meeting the needs of their kids, where with both sets of kids having some needs that were very similar and some that were really different. And so I don't know how different it would have looked, but the difference is that if we had handed the parents an RFP already written, I'm sure that they all would have found tons of holes in it, even if it was the same. And it's just important that it's done, that folks have some amount of agency in that work. Because at the end of the day, what we did find is universally, Maya, Irene, Pave, Focus, Ward 8 Post, all the parents, we just want really great schools for children. And so the devil is in the details. And I think that on the RFP, they did a really nice job of not getting too like in the weeds in any one thing, but really making sure it reflected their values. I think that just getting the parents to a place of deep trust where they could name what some of the real challenges are in education. These were groups that were really diverse, racially, ethnically, socioeconomically, really different experiences growing up, different experiences with public education, different experiences with the types of schools they'd sent their children. Because remember, none of these families actually have children who will be able to attend this school. The military families will have moved away. The Ward 8 families will have kids who are too old. So seeing like the deep sense of community, them finding commonalities across difference about their kids was incredibly powerful. And I think we had a skillful facilitator in our project manager. I think PAVE is excellent at what it does with parents, but there's always that fear that like when you're facilitating something across difference, that things can go like drastically left. And it didn't. It was just one of the really great people and one of the nicest parts of doing this project. I mean, if you have to go somewhere twice a month on a Saturday for 5 hours, it better be with people you like and respect and enjoy. And I can honestly say that about every parent. I think the parents say that about each other also. Things. Number one, we want to make sure that this story is not lost. We want other groups to be able to replicate or improve upon it. And we want other people to understand that this is a viable process that works. I also think that the operator that the Ward 8 Post selected is deeply, deeply committed to community engagement. I think one of the things the parents reflected back to me when we visited their school is that, like, in that school, the electives that the middle schoolers take, those were selected by the families in the community. I think even by majority rules, right? They just were like, we can do 2 of 5 things and you get to pick. And they picked them and that's what it is. And the parents who we met with there spoke really highly. So I feel really confident based on the operator who was selected that they're in the process of hiring a community engagement person now to do work on the ground, even before they have a charter, to make sure that people know the story of the selection, that they understand the model, that they're invested in their success, and that they want, that they create a school that people want to send their children to. Because I think there's also, in Ward 8, I don't think the base itself and the base community has been a part of the Ward 8 community in the way that either side would necessarily like. And the school's an opportunity to like bridge that divide. And I really do think they picked an operator who has some experience there. In fact, where they are in Illinois, they talk about, they have families who ask to stay in Great Lakes because they like the school so much. They ask not to be transferred to other bases. And in addition, when folks leave the military, they often stay in Great Lakes off base to continue sending their kids to the school, which is something that is, I don't know how much you know about like schools on bases or the educational opportunities that military families have, but a lot of times it's a really serious pain point. And so we're hoping that the school becomes like a point of pride for both the Ward 8 community and the military community.